Hello and welcome to TNM TV News. I'm John Cumming, editor of the Northern Miner. This week we bring you an interview with David McIntyre, a mining lawyer at the law firm Gowlings in Toronto. McIntyre is a former marketing executive with Vale, but now works with Chinese state-owned firms looking to invest in Canadian resource companies. He spoke with Mining Markets editor Alicia Hyatt at this year's PDAC and offers advice for Canadian companies wanting to access Chinese capital.
What are Chinese companies looking for?
They're looking for almost any natural resource you can think of, but iron ore, copper, nickel, gold, uranium, and they're looking for projects in Canada as well as projects around the world that happen to be owned by TSX-listed companies.
You've been at Gowlings for 2 years. How have you seen Canadian attitudes towards Chinese investment change over that time?
2 years ago, Canadians weren't really aware of the opportunity. They, I'm sure, would have been open to it, but didn't know much about what was available and how to get it. That's changing now. Now you have mining companies that are translating all their information into Chinese and having Chinese language websites and going to China to promote investment in their companies. So the attitude, I don't think has really changed. What's changed more is the approach.
How do Canadian companies access those opportunities?
You have to actually work with government. That's one thing to know. For instance, the government of Canada has a forum in Chinese language with Chinese interpreters for Chinese investors. So that's a special adjunct forum to PDAC where companies are presenting their projects over sort of a 10-minute presentation. And then you also have to work with advisors and you have to have language skills. You need interpreters. So it actually is not so easy to access the Chinese investors because of the language issues, and so you have to really work at it and you have to build connections.
You say there's actually a lot of M&A activity between China and Canada that isn't happening. Can you tell us why that is?
Well, there's quite a bit that is happening, and there are deals that don't actually get concluded, and we have different systems, and the Canadian system is a very open system which allows competitive bidding for any company, and very few companies are willing to allow themselves to be sold without a competitive process. Whereas in China, transactions are done very consensually and they're done without an open competition. It's a negotiation between two companies that's typically closed, like our private transactions are. So where the tension in the two systems is, because our target companies, the Canadian companies, wish to be acquired at the highest price possible, they will not want to sign a deal that's binding that has not had the opportunity for competition. Whereas the Chinese investors want to lock the situation up. And you have to find a middle ground in order to reach the deal.
Do you have any other advice for Canadian mining companies who might want to access Chinese investment?
Well, certainly, as I mentioned, translating your materials into Chinese is the first thing. It sounds so basic, but it's a necessity. You have to get to China. You have to build a relationship with Chinese investors. It's very different from North America, where it's essentially a deal can be done over a weekend. It doesn't work like that. They prefer to invest in a situation where they've established a level of trust. And so to do that, it's a personal transaction. Even when you're dealing with a state-owned enterprise, the personal relationship is key. So typically you need some sort of intermediary that's a friend that's somehow involved on both sides. So there's quite a few people in Canada who have relationships in China, and they have relationships in Canada, and they help to bridge the gap essentially to establish trust. Another thing that's happening recently is there's private sort of advanced investors who come from private equity investors who are coming from China to invest in the mining company, and then establishing a relationship between essentially China and the mining company. And then as the project moves to a later stage, it might be of interest to, for instance, an SOE to buy in its entirety, but the relationship process has already started. So it's more of a long-term building situation than just issuing a prospectus and collecting some money from investors.
Are you seeing a lot of interest from Chinese companies in listing in Toronto on the TSX or TSXV?
Yes, we've seen quite a few companies that are interested, and they're excellent companies, excellent mining projects, because China is actually one of the great mining countries of the world. Even though they're acquiring international projects in their own backyard, just like us in Canada, we're acquiring projects around the world, but we're also developing our own mining industry continually. And so there are many great projects there, and there's a bit of a gap. And the gap is between early stage exploration and project development. There aren't a lot of sources of capital other than bank funding, and bank funding generally needs a guarantee. So if you have an early stage project, that's very suitable for the equity markets, and our market in particular really understands that. Coming to Canada, though, for a Chinese company is tricky right now because of the situation with recent accounting problems with some Chinese companies. There's been a bit of a broad brush approach to the market where they're no longer considered attractive investments. I hope that that's just a temporary thing, that the good companies are put forward, and if they have the proper governance in place.
You spend a lot of time in China, so I just wanted to ask you, do you see signs of a slowdown there that we should be worried about here?
It's hard to imagine that the roaring economy can continue indefinitely. But as far as what I can see, driving around a car in Beijing or Chongqing or any of the other cities of China, no, it's amazing what's going on. The pace of development is astounding. Every time I go back, something has changed. And it's for instance, the high-speed rail network that they're building is it's astounding. And it's like nothing the world has ever seen before. So I'm sure there will be pauses and breaks in that, but for now I'm very confident that it will continue.
That's it for this week. Thanks for joining us.